Hello, welcome to the Motor Racing Passion Podcast, brought to you by Breakthrough Health and Wellness. Luke Blackman and Daniel Blackman with you to discuss round 3 and 4 of the Speed Series, leading into round 5 next weekend at Queensland Raceway. We'll start with TCR and their third round at Bathurst. I had reservations about 2 of the 7 rounds of this year's, basically a sprint race championship being held at Bathurst, but this event, plus the last round from last year at Bathurst, has shown that the track really suits the cars and the racing right down to the ground.
Yeah, I agree. That's they always put on a good show, the TCR cars here. Front wheel drive cars being able to stretch their legs down the straights, and obviously over the top, the flow as well really suits them well. And I think the drivers now have got comfortable is the wrong word, because I don't think you ever get comfortable around that place. But in terms of, they've raced there a couple of times now, so it's like it's not the kind of the carnage that we saw early on when I think back to last year. So yeah, I was like 2 times a year I think is great. Fingers crossed, almost looking to the future, but we can get this endurance race, 500k 2 driver world TCR type of event happening. Once the post-COVID world kind of settles down. But I'm a big fan. And the way we're losing permanent circuits in Australia, or at least they're going at risk, I feel like we'll be doing 2 rounds at Bathurst well into the future.
Talk of that 250 or 500k enduro sort of died off recently. There was no even mention of it this year. They just made the last round. They just said right from off the bat it'll be a sprint round.
Yeah, which is like understanding but disappointing at the same time. But one interesting thing was obviously, the reliance on Asian and world TCR cars to obviously put on an endurance style race. And do you know what I mean? The excitement takes you back to the World Touring Car Championship in the late 80s here, as well as the super touring events as well, that you can see some Australian drivers pair up with international drivers and things like that, and also bring an extra dimension to these cars. Like they are great in sprint format, but I think giving them a bit of an endurance run as well will be fascinating to see. But you're right, it's kind of like there's the COVID thing that's obviously put on the back burner, but there was even some chat earlier that a number of these TCR cars, obviously with the refueling rigs and the different type of equipment they need, aren't suitable at the moment as well, which is kind of a concern, and obviously a bigger issue for the future, that some fair amount of investment will have to go into upgrading the fuel systems in the cars, or in some cases getting new cars. So probably something to dive in deeper in the future and just see how that progresses. But I think that's just, if we continue to have sprint race after sprint race at Bathurst, it'll be good, but I think we're missing a bit of a trick there. Yeah,
exactly. Well, hopefully they're still working towards it, because I think it's one of those, it'll probably you'll have to get a bit of a buy-in from Marcello Lotti and the TCR international rights holders.
Yeah, because a lot to learn from how SRO involvement with the 12-hour.
Yeah, and I mean, TCR cars, they do a lot of Crevantic 24-hour races, and there was the Spa 500 in 2019, which, I mean, it had a very small field. I think it was 17 or 19 starters for the it's effectively a 24-hour race, but unfortunately, I think COVID stifled its growth onwards. But yeah, if we get back to the racing at Bathurst, it's you would have thought after qualifying it was going to be a Peugeot benefit, and I mean it sort of was, but the Hyundais, but the Hyundais, they seem to come into their own in the second race, the Twilight race on the Saturday.
Yeah, I was going to say it's funny how, and we'll go into this as the further we chat about it, but kind of like the ebbs and flows of a TCR weekend. But Bally Sweeney taking out the second race. It was a bit of a Peugeot benefit when you look at Aaron Cameron, Ben Barguana, Dylan O'Keefe, and you think it could have been even more dominating with the great Jordan Cox as well, who was one of my tips leading in and had some speed in qualifying and looked good, and then copped that penalty which hurt him. But like that, the Peugeots love that racetrack, and all the guys obviously driving it pretty hard.
Well, actually, that's one thing I took away from all the three races is that there might, particularly race 2 and 3, there were sort of runaway winners. Sweeney in the second race and Cameron in the third race. But I mean, second on back, it was like a HQ race. It was just cars all over the place.
Yeah, yeah, banging doors and changing it all up. But that I was gonna say too, it's probably been a while coming because I can't think it off the top of my head. But Aaron Cameron to deliver two dominant races like that, first time I've seen it in a little while.
It's a pity, really, he hasn't been able to do more of that this year because he's been quite inconsistent in terms of the championship as a whole. He's sitting sixth after 4 rounds, sixth in the championship, 60 odd points off the lead. You'd probably say he's out of contention at the moment, despite such a dominating performance.
Dominating, yeah. I was gonna say too, and then like Ben Barguana's been good, but he's been quite up and down as well. You know, James Moffat grabbed a second in that Twilight race too. But as well, he's been so up and down. That Renault, lovely car, but yeah, they've obviously had their challenges with it across the season. But yeah, the Peugeots and Hyundais, I guess, definitely. Well, when I look at it, the pick over the Bathurst round and quite a few of the other rounds as well.
And if we've then followed on to Eastern Creek, which Sydney Motorsport Park, that that we were in attendance in on the Sunday, it was sort of the Hyundais carried their race 2 at Bathurst form onto the creek, with Buchan taking race 1 and Walken race 3.
Yeah, when you look at that weekend as well, and what actually a cracker it was in terms of just the three races and the ebbs and flows. But yeah, with Josh Buchan as well, there loves that place, and he didn't have that exhilarating outside turn 1 pass for us this season, but yeah, the Hyundais across all three races filling out the podium, and yeah, I think Morecambe taking race 3 from Buchan as well. It's interesting to see if that continues on this weekend at Queensland Raceway. Thinking the same, not the same track, but you know, that kind of fast flowing nature of it, you'd think would have to suit the Hyundais and Peugeots again.
Small shout out to Josh Buchan. You talked about that outside pass he pulled in 2021. Well, I managed to capture that on my iPhone, and I chucked it up on the socials, and Josh gave it a like and a little comment, which was very nice of him.
Big supporter of the show.
But one thing that showed, we were there on the Sunday, and I mean, there's no two ways about it. It was freezing cold.
The wind would cut through you that day.
Yeah. But the cool temps and the resultant lack of grip, I mean, particularly the early laps of the races, the cars were sideways, and that really seemed to help the racing too.
Yeah, that's what Sunday morning race 2. That was particularly chaotic, and do you know what I mean? Door to door, the amount of cars we sat up at the final section of the circuit back onto the main straight, and that was a great place to watch too. One of the great vantage points is around Eastern Creek there. But yeah, they were coming in 2-3 wide at some cases, and then banging doors. Braden Willington, who I think it was in Luke King from memory, were just like trading blows onto the back straight. So yeah, no, it was there was plenty going on, and I think it was Fabian Coulthard that mentioned it in one of the post-race interviews as well. And yeah, and they just said like that everyone was struggling for tyre temp, which gave it that little Toka touring cars driving on ice feel. Yeah. And yeah, no, it produced a great spectacle.
Part of the spectacle from Eastern Creek as well, in terms of the TV coverage, was Stan Sports have brought back drivers talking on race cam during the races.
What a throwback, isn't it? From the great Channel 7 and Bathurst 1000 days of the late 80s and early 90s. And but yeah, no, I thought that was a great little like addition, and credit to whoever rolled that in. Obviously a view to the history that was, but yeah, I think that gives some great insights and brings you close to the driver's perspective mid-race.
They did quite a good job. It was Will Brown did it, and I think James Moffat did it in the earlier race as well. And I mean, they picked and chose sort of when to talk to them. They didn't do them like what Channel 7 would do occasionally back in the day when they'd cross to Dick Johnson right as he's battling for the lead or something, and which Dick Johnson never seemed to mind. But you can't imagine them doing it these days. And they sort of did it in a part of the race where like Will Brown was sort of rolling around on his own and everything, but they seemed really, really keen to do it, the drivers who did it, and it came across really good on the TV.
Yeah, and that I think and good on Stan. Like they're investing money, and that's, I don't know the producer who's behind it, but investing money in the series. But then also they're trying to do different initiatives and things like that to to build some rapport with the drivers, do something different, and make it engaging. So I think that's, credit to the drivers because they're on board with it, and the teams. But yeah, I think more of that into the future is great for the series, and great for the drivers.
It's ironic, actually. I assume the producer's probably a Supercars media person, so you wonder if that'll get rolled into other Supercars media produced content.
Yeah, that could be, but we'll see how that relationship develops or deteriorates moving forward.
That's the caveat at the end. I
Yeah.
guess will Supercars media be producing the broadcast next year?
AB, you've got another call.
Yeah. You talked earlier about the sort of the inconsistency and the jumbled up of some of the results. That's probably the main telling point of this year so far, is there's been such a mix of winners and inconsistency that's led to a very mixed up point score.
Yeah,
For instance, like Tony D'Alberto, obviously he's got a 20 odd point lead, and he's had 11 top 10s from the 12 races, 5 top 5s, only 3 podiums and no victories. He's got an average finish of 6.3, yet he's led the championship for most of the year. Is this a good thing, do you think? Or
well, I mean, it shows you that everyone's in it, which to me is a good thing. And I was a little bit startled too coming out of Eastern Creek when I flipped on the website there and had a look at the driver standings. And yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was thinking there was a bit of an error, but yeah, like, because that Honda, apart from in Coulthard's hands at Phillip Island, it hasn't really been on the pace, or setting the pace at any event this year, which I was a bit surprised at, because they're a well drilled outfit and it's a good car. So yeah, I do think it's a good thing, because what's it, 60 points from first to 8th.
yeah,
So I think that's everyone's still in it with a shot. In a way, it does make it hard to know who like if you're looking for a good head-to-head kind of championship stoush. Do you know what I mean? Like in terms of a Mick Hakkinen and a Michael Schumacher or a Damon Hill, like, do you know what I mean? Some real rivalries to kind of build, where it kind of feels like everyone's racing everyone all the time. So I guess that's the only downside. You miss that kind of narrative of a big, like, duel to the championship. But I mean, in this day and age, diversity and unpredictability is highly valued in motor racing. So I can't fault it. The only thing is, which might be one of your other points, is the reverse grid race 2, or the reversing the top 10, does offer something new, and obviously it rewards people to who can pick their way through, and we've seen a bit of that as well. I could do without it, to be honest. For mine, it doesn't offer that much, and maybe that'd be interesting to see how that changes the championship outlook if we didn't have that race 2 kind of reversing of the top 10. But yeah, overall, I think we're sitting 4 rounds in, as we said, plenty of drivers in the mix. So yeah, it's be interesting to see what happens in the second half of the season.
It's one of those things where when there's only 2 or 3 blokes doing all the winning, there's calls for it needs to be more even. Everyone wants to see more winners. No one wants to see the same guys winning all the races. And then when you get a whole bunch of different people winning all the races, then the complaints are, oh, we don't know who's winning, we don't know who's doing well. How are we supposed to know who the form guys are? I think the reverse grid race, usually categories go for a reverse grid race for the fast guys to come, basically to fight their way back through the field. And the excitement is meant to be driven from those guys battling their way through the field. But given everything's so close, all the reverse grid seems to offer is just a different winner, because most of the time the guys who win race one or finish at the front in race one, they're only getting up to sixth or seventh in race two.
Yeah.
Unless someone like Fabian Coulthard at Phillip Island, he was sort of the exception. But race two seems to just offer someone in the lower half of the top 10 ends up sort of dominating race two. That in a way, I think, takes a bit of the point of the reverse grid away.
Yeah, agree. And then I just also despise the thing sometimes people hear talk about drivers like angling to finish 10th and things like that to try and get a front row start or a pole position start for race two. So that irks me a little bit. But yeah, I agree. It's not like there's this huge disparity amongst the speed of the cars, and it is quite easy to get bottled.
And I guess you can accuse D'Alberto of playing the consistency card and not doing any winning. But if you have a look at sort of the stats from this year, we've had 8 different winners from the 12 races. Jay Hanson's won 3, Coulthard and Cameron have won 2 each, and then Cox, Suter, Sweeney, Buchan and Morecambe have had 1 win apiece. And that we've ended up then with 3 wins to Audi, 3 wins to Peugeot, 3 wins to Honda, and 3 wins to Hyundai out of the first 12. So, I mean, you can't get much more even than that.
No. And yet that's what I say. Like the share across the marks as well is really good and really positive as well. Because obviously we said about the Peugeot and the Hyundais, but do you know what I mean? You've had Hondas winning, you've had Audis winning, so that's and after last year too. When you think about when you think back to last year and the domination from Mostert, as well, that was obviously really strong driver, but also the Audi was the pick of the bunch last year as well. So to see this year when you do have some more consistency across the marks winning races, it's really good for the series.
Would you have picked 12 races in that Will Brown wouldn't have won a race and be sitting ninth in the points?
No, and this, like, no disrespect to Will Brown, but I kind of like that too, that he hasn't. It's obviously former champion, jumped in the Audi, as said, that was the clear leader or dominant car last year. So I had reservations that it could have been another clean sweep or dominating drive. So I'm surprised, but let's say I'm not upset about it. There, I hope he does have a strong second half of the year. As we've seen, there seems to be a lot more balanced across the performance of the cars. But Will Brown's battle with Coulthard in the final race at Phillip Island, that was high quality, and I think that obviously shows you what he's capable of. He's former champion, so I think we can probably look forward to some good races from him in the back end of the year.
I think it's one of those things where him and Coulthard, you didn't want them to come in and just dominate, but by the same token, you still want them to do well. And we'll see what happens in the second half of the year. Will Brown's had a bit of bad luck as well, but
plenty, yeah. And I think that's to your point there. I think you want them to earn it. Do you know what I mean? And I think so far they both had. Like Coulthard's had that great weekend at Phillip Island, but he's also had some challenging weekends at Simmons Plains and that obviously Bathurst. Oh no, he didn't have Bathurst, did he? Because he had COVID, didn't he?
Yeah.
So it was, then Sydney Motorsport Park. So it's like, it hasn't all come easy. I think that's the big thing with any of the high profile drivers that step in. You want them to come in and earn it and battle with the regulars. And I think that's what's been happening this season, which has been really good to watch.
I think we're seeing evidence as well that these cars are a bit of an acquired taste in terms of getting the best out of them. Because obviously Will Brown's jumping between the Audi and his supercars Commodore. Fabian Coulthard hasn't driven a front wheel. I think he said he never raced a front wheel drive car until the start of the year, or at least in a very long time. And then when Coulthard had to sit out Bathurst and Tim Slade jumped in, Tim Slade did a good job, but he was sort of mid-pack. Yeah, so it shows that you can't just jump in them and be competitive. They're as difficult to get the best out of as a supercar or anything else, a GT3 car, or when you're a regular in them, it shows.
Yeah, no, and I think that's good because we encourage the kind of guys to jump in and do a season or do some mod rounds. But yeah, you can see that they need to work for it, which is great for the category.
We've seen the Toyota TCR car launched by Toyota Argentina recently, and the Bateses were at Eastern Creek and there was a bit of a hint of a possibility of a Toyota programs at least being talked about by them. That has to be a good thing going forward. You need to get Toyota, and I mean especially Bates in a Toyota. If you can get them into the category, that would be a very good thing going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. You can get Toyota into this series. That's another step forward, another strong brand. And obviously they're investing money into Australian motorsport, which is great. I would love them to. I'm not a huge follower of Toyota 86s, but I think getting them racing against other brands is probably a priority for them. And yeah, if that can be via TCR with the Bates program that obviously runs the rally and supports the 86 series, I think that's very, very exciting for the series and for them as well. And like just we've already got a great smorgasbord of manufacturers in the series represented. So increasing that and adding new ones is and a great sign or show of strength of the series as well. But the fact that someone Toyota is interested in it, and as you said during one of the interviews, it did come across that things are progressing well there to have a Toyota on the grid sometime soon.
Mark Fogarty's talked about it recently on his podcast that it's at least being rumoured and talked about. So, and Barry Rogers also mentioned on Mark Fogarty's podcast that there's been talk of people bringing in a Lincoln Co.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, so it's good that there's new cars getting talked about being brought in, because if one thing's this year is we haven't sort of seen any new cars imported. We're sort of still making do with the cars that came out in 2019.
Yeah.
So for the category to keep moving forward, I suppose. Well, no, we had Jay Hanson's new Audi, but other than that, we lost some of the variety in the Subarus and the Astras. So going forward, it'd be good if some new cars can come in, especially a Link.
Yeah, exactly. And to our point earlier, we need new cars because we need them to have without having to spend a huge amount of money on refueling systems and things for the cars. If we do want to go down the different formats and endurance races here, we need to go through the cycle of bringing in some new cars. So the Astras I quite enjoyed. The Subarus, it didn't look like anyone was going to be able to make them work. Yeah. So be interested to see if they're still sitting in someone's shed or whether they were sold.
I think they went back overseas.
Yeah, okay.
Possibly,
Yeah,
or maybe that was the Astras that went out. I'm not sure.
I don't think
maybe they've all gone.
I don't think Molly Taylor was crying. See the back of those.
Well, remember there was the Cooper as well.
Yeah, there was too. It's funny that it doesn't feel that long ago, but it was like, what's that? 3 years ago now. We're standing on the hill watching that first race at Eastern Creek. Yeah.
Yeah. COVID did seem to speed life up. So
yeah, it's just when you think back to the initial season, it's 2019. You're like, oh yeah. So here we are, and it still feels young and fresh.
Yeah. Well, one thing you can't really complain about is the amount of cars. We can talk about the diversity of how many cars are in the field and how many different marks there are, or how old the cars are. But I mean, they're getting over 20 cars to each round. I mean, that's a great sign.
Yeah, and the quality of drivers in them. Yeah, as I say, it's you turn up and you know, like the quality of what's being delivered is strong. Yeah. So
I know we're good on this podcast at spending other people's money, but you'd almost have to say ARG, if Toyota doesn't want to pay for it, I mean, they should do all they can to get a Toyota in the series.
Agreed. The only thing I will defend them, and you're right, like we do come up with some great ideas for other people to invest in. The only thing I'll defend them a bit, like do you know what I mean? They have invested in a lot of cars to this point, so it's kind of like at what point do you just let the base of what they've got on the grid now? But yeah, I think but I think the lure of Toyota is what comes with it.
Yeah.
So if they just bought a Toyota and stuck it on the grid, like that's good and all. But yeah, you want Toyota being in the series, investing some dollars, doing their own promotions. I think
Yeah.
that's where the series will tick along. When you've got Audi doing their like promotions, you got Hyundai doing their promotions, you've got Honda. That's where that the benefits will come from. So I don't know if it'll be an outlay of cash, but they should be definitely wooing Toyota and kind of working with them to tailor something that's will get them on the grid.
That's probably where, like, as cool as it would be for a Lincoln Co. to come onto the grid, you're probably not that likely to get the corporate Geely backing with it. So you don't gain anything corporately out of that. So
Yeah, it's a short term kind of win. It's like when there's diversity like there is now. Like if you didn't have it, like say we had 10 Hyundais and 10 Peugeots,
yeah.
then I think there'd be some value in the owners putting some other stuff on. But thankfully we're not a 2-mark grid, which would be pretty bland to look at. There's actually some great diversity of cars. So I agree. I think that's where I think the Lincoln Co. will come from an enthusiast or someone looking to, upgrade the competitiveness of their car.
All right, we'll take a quick break and then we'll be back to talk about more of the Speed Series in general. Breakthrough Health and Wellness. The Breakthrough 60-Day Challenge combines a highly effective weight loss program and a high-end personal fitness experience without costly memberships. In a culture of flash workouts and going hard, Breakthrough have taken a more sustainable approach and developed the perfect program that will not only get you fit and healthy, but also help you shed stubborn weight that you thought was never going to budge. Breakthrough will offer new inspiration and goals that will lead to life changes you can easily maintain. Each week, Breakthrough offer interesting muscular endurance, strengthening and functional movement exercises with a training app that will rival any workout you have done at the gym. For more information, visit mybreakthrough.com.au. That's MYBreakthrough and follow Breakthrough on Facebook and Instagram. Welcome back. Now, the last round of the Speed Series at Eastern Creek featured Saturday night racing. Do you think they made the most of it though, Daniel?
I think they did. They had the live TV through Stan. It was, I think the timing of it was okay. Do you know what I mean? In terms of that balance of twilight into evening racing and make use of obviously the high investment that's gone into lighting at Eastern Creek. Looking at the categories you had on offer, like it was a pretty packed kind of weekend, so to speak. So that's was going to be one of my points. I was like, could we put of another category? Could you put a GT race or something for the future? But overall, like between TCM, TCR, S5000 on that Saturday kind of schedule, I don't really know what else potentially we could have done to make it better, whether you played with a different format potentially, but overall, so I think as a first kind of run, I think it went well, and I'd look forward to it being part of future TCR and ARG races at Eastern Creek.
I wondered, because I know it was the middle of winter and it gets dark early, so sort of the TV time slot was 5:30 to 7:30, so that gave everyone a race, but it was promoted as a night meeting, and I mean, really, the same goes for the supercars with their super night races. They get promoted as a night meeting, but the bulk of the racing still happens on the Sunday in the daylight. Surely you can run later than 7:30 and get more races in.
Yeah,
maybe that's not as good for the live TV, but it's a Saturday night. Like an NRL game doesn't finish till 9:30 in the middle of winter.
I imagine there's probably a couple of things to play. Obviously, the 7:30 TV window is good in terms of a prime time. Whether they're trying to angle it at kids and families, so you come out Saturday afternoon and it's not late, Saturday night could be one as well. My only other thought may be to officials backing up Sunday morning, because things kicked off fairly early Sunday morning as well.
Yeah.
With the production car endurance race, so that there may have been some balancing or concerns around that. But yeah, if you didn't have to kick off super early on the Sunday morning, so everyone got suitable breaks in and things like that, yeah, I think running till 9:30 or 10 o'clock is quite feasible as well. But I mean, you could still have your prime time window, TV window at 7:30, but then yeah, run some more races after that as well to alleviate that on Sunday, so you're not jam packed with events on the Sunday.
What if you just had the 4 SpeedSeries staples and just ran it all on Saturday?
And no Sunday.
No Sunday, and then you just ran until curfew on the Saturday night. So then in May you'd get say 2 of the TCR races in the dark, and maybe say the racing starts at 4 o'clock or something, goes through 4 to 10 or something, or even earlier. Just do your practice qualifying in the morning and then racing all afternoon into the night, because then the whole weekend culminates with the night racing, instead of I feel now with a lot of the night racing, but both at the ARG event and also the supercars night races, it just seems like they advertise it as a night race, but it's just an extension of the Saturday. Saturday just runs a bit later. And sort of by the end of the weekend, what's the forefront in people's mind is what happened on the Sunday, not what happened on the Saturday night.
Yeah, because that's on the side, like, too, promoting as a night race, is that more just to say, hey, there's some racing at night, rather than saying that's the centerpiece of the weekend? Because I reckon that's what they need to decide, like what is, because I think people still want, and I interpret this from what ARG doing, they still want people to come on the Sunday. They still want Sunday to be a big day. It's more just the novelty of racing under lights on a Saturday.
Yeah, well, I suppose TV contract wise, be it for other supercars or SpeedSeries, that you probably have to give 2 days of content, I guess. So,
Well, and that, yeah, you almost need to flip the thing, because whether they work it out, and for future run Friday night and Saturday night. Do you know what I mean? And make it, make the whole thing a night race event, rather than just hey, here's one event that we're running at night.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I didn't mind the one each category, or select categories, but getting one night race on a Saturday night, and then the full day's running on Sunday. As you said, we got out there on Sunday, and that was a pretty jam-packed day. So like, part of me does want to lose that element of it as well.
I've said it before, like Australian motorsports have sort of just become sort of fast food, in the extent that it's sort of it exists to make content for TV channels at the moment. So the more races you can produce is what's required. But I just thought a 1 day event with the focus point of the night racing would work. But I mean, look, I'm sort of picking at straws, because it was the format was fine. Like, the night racing was cool, and it was the equivalent to a football match. It was 2 hours, sort of 5:30 to 7:30. Good for a TV window. So maybe I'm looking for problems that aren't there.
No. Well, Jeremy, where they're at the moment, especially in the Sydney market, there, it's not a bad idea or not worth trying. Do you know what I mean? I just don't know if that will end up being the solution. But yeah, like, Jeremy, if they did want to make it the whole thing a night event, rather than just it being a night race within a weekend, maybe they do look at running Friday night and Saturday night. Do you know what I mean? It just tip the event, rather than from like a practice Friday, race Saturday, race Sun, or qualify Saturday, run Sunday. If they do make it a Friday night and Saturday night, and then it is a targeting that way, I just ultimately don't know if motor racing fans in the middle of May or June want to sit in the cold in the night at a racetrack. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, does night racing work better in spring or autumn or something? So because summer it gets dark too late, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But in spring, is that is that an option to do that? And then, do you know what I mean? And then you can make the thing more around the evening kind of runs. I just like, and don't get me wrong, I'm totally fine if they just go, this is for TV. Like, you know, we're going to do Friday night running and Saturday night running events because that's what the weekend, and it's targeted for TV. So
I would have said, sort of March, April, late September into October is probably your perfect sort of night racing weather in terms of a mix of it's not too hot and you're getting enough darkness to make it worthwhile.
Yep.
But then there was a relatively huge crowd showed up to the first supercars night race of the modern era in 2018 at Eastern Creek. I was shocked with how many people showed up to that night event in the middle of winter. And I mean, people go to footy matches, get huge crowds in the middle of winter. So I mean, I know it's very different.
They do, but I'm a bit over people using football as a reason to justify motor racing things.
Oh no, I agree with that completely.
Yeah, because they're different, and that's I can't get. I find it so ridiculous how people justify what Motorsport should do based on NRL and AFL when there's so much difference. Yeah.
I shouldn't have used that analogy. But...
No. Sorry, that's not a crack at you because I understand it. But just the reference to it like going to a stadium it's totally different to a racetrack, and Motorsport fans are different than NRL fans, and you go there for different time periods and different movements, and there's just so much that it's not a transferal from one to the other.
No, Australian motorsport has become the way it is now because there's been a 25-year obsession with comparing ourselves to ball sports and trying to make it more like a ball sport.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're so far down the track now; it's unlikely to go back. But
no, and that's not a reason, or that's not me saying we shouldn't try new things. It's just saying we shouldn't just try things because try the things that AFL and NRL are doing. So
yeah. I get the only other idea I had to maybe counter to make the night section go longer and not necessarily affect a Sunday program would be, say this year you had the TCR races that the TCR was the final race that finished at 7:30. Imagine if you had, say, a 2-hour Australian GT Championship round that ran, say, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and they didn't have to back up on the Sunday. I think that now that doesn't answer your officials. The question about the officials. So,
but I was gonna say, if you just run later on Saturday night, it just means you start later on Sunday morning. So what's
yeah.
But the other thing I do with that as well, and you've seen, and I know it's for TV, and so you got to be a bit creative and things like that. But like, I'd almost run a 2-hour GT race or a production race, whatever, from like 4 to 6 or 5 to 7, and then have your headliners, or your TCR or whatever it is for that thing. Then at 8 o'clock or something. Do you know what I mean? Because that way you've kind of got something interesting, and then the hook of the big sprint race thing at the end of it or something, rather than just tacking on these things right at the start or the end.
Yeah. Did you think enough emphasis was put on the spectators who attended Eastern Creek?
Yeah, interesting question. Like, do you know what I mean? You and I sat there on Sunday, and I thought it was pretty good. Like apart from it being windy, which I'm not sure anyone can change that. I saw some comments on social media taking some pot shots about grass from people who hadn't actually set foot in Sydney for the last 4 months. And if they did, they would have realised that cutting grass in Sydney is virtually impossible with the amount of rain and just the weather it's been. So, like, do you know what I mean? If taking out those things, there was some references, they wanted some big screens and some stuff like that. But like, if you sit in the right spot of Eastern Creek, you can see half the lap. If you've got Stan, and we did that as well, we had the broadcast on our phones. So, do you know what I mean? If you could actually see some things going on or some different things. The one thing that I think you and I did comment on too, where there are a few sections where the speakers around the circuit had kind of gone dead.
Yeah.
So I think that would be something that definitely needs to be fixed, but like is a relatively straight fix. But other than that, I'm not I'm not overly sure what was missing from a spectator point of view.
Well, I mean, there's not enough people there going to these events to justify big screens.
No.
I mean, that's one thing, but then again, would putting big screens in encourage more people to come?
No.
Probably not.
Yeah. But I was like, and this is not being hard because everyone consumes motorsport in different ways. But I was like, if your plan is to come to a racetrack, pot yourself in the grandstand opposite the pits and not move for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And your complaint is there's no big screen, so I can't see what's going on. Understandably, if you've got some accessibility needs and things like that, 100%. Yeah. Like, there's some, some options then to how you can support those spectators through that way. But other than that, there's so many good vantage points. Get up out of your seat, have a look around, or exactly, bring your phone or your iPad and click it on Stan, or do you know what I mean? Or get the circuit radio station and put that in your ears as well. I was gonna say, I think there's a number of more practical solutions than popping a big screen on the front straight so people in the grandstand can see that.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing we did notice was there were a lack of amenities on the outside of the track in terms of food stalls and things like that. The emphasis seemed to be to go into the pits because there was a lot of food available in there. There was, there were stickers, team stickers and everything. You can get posters. You can get. There was
super cheap auto hub, little walkthrough thing as well for fans. Yeah, it was. Yeah. It was their approach seemed to be to funnel people into let's say that pit lane hub thing, which there was as you said, there was a lot of food, a lot of drinks, a lot of fan engagement, and also then that viewing platform on top of the pits, which was pretty popular. Yeah,
and they had the paddock podium as well, which I thought was a good sign.
Yeah,
World Superbikes do a similar thing.
Yeah.
Rather than have the podium that looks out on the track into the grandstand. That's where their emphasis is at the moment. It's I guess they know there's not going to be bumper crowds there, so why spend the money outside the track when? Is that a worry or?
Well, I think it's the whole thing, chicken and the egg, isn't it? Too. The one thing I think they could do though was for people who are around the track, it's because there's nothing stopping you. You can drive your car around the track, so there's no way you can't get in and around there. So maybe it's more just better advertising what's available in that pit lane hub. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we found it because we, when we go to a racetrack, that's one of the things you do. Do you know what I mean? Go and look at the cars in the pits and chat to people and catch up with crew members and things that we know. So that, do you know what I mean? We were always going to do that, and we know that the ARDC lounge there is, as racetrack food and amenities go, better than anything I can really recall or experienced. So I was gonna say that's we just do that out of habit, but maybe that's until there is some bigger crowds that can warrant the outlay of putting up food stands and drink stands and things like that all around the track. Because the other thing is, where would you do it? Where we spent some time just to the left of the grandstand, which is a great spot for listeners there. As I said, you can see over half the lap. Get close to the cars or semi-close to the cars, see some overtaking points. That's probably a good spot where you could, because there was a good grouping of spectators. But then you're going to put something on the exit of turn 1 down into turn 2, and then on the inside of turn 4, and then on the outside of turn 7. It's kind of where does it start and end? That's why I think advertising it and saying, hey guys, there's all these great initiatives out there. In the pits. Encourage you to get there. There's plenty of parking. You can all these kind of things. Then as that grows, then you can kind of build extra little hubs around the track, and that might be the way to go. Rather than trying to have something on every corner, start with your pit lane hub, and then maybe it is a turn 3 hub or a turn 9 hub, whatever it is, and just build where there's actual spectators and things.
Probably depends on the track too they're at. Symmons Plains seems to get a good crowd for the SpeedSeries round. So I suppose at a track like that, that's where you'd start concentrating what you're going to do outside the pits.
Yeah.
and
Agree.
then build that up at various events. Like I assume Queensland Raceway next weekend, they might get a good crowd.
Yeah, and Tony will probably want to make a bit of impact for his first major event as well. So.
Yeah, so I mean, Eastern Creek has always been hard to draw fans. So
But
yeah,
here's the thing.
in the last 15 years.
Yeah, but here's the thing on that as well. Like, say Simmons Plains, and I agree. I love watching that on the track. I haven't actually been there, but we're talking about a 1.8 or 1.9 kilometer track.
Yeah.
In a, let's, for lack of a better word, a triangle kind of setup, and versus Eastern Creek, that's what, 5Ks or just under 5Ks. It's so much more spread out. So it's kind of like, I don't know what the crowd's actually looking at ticket stubs and sales and things are, but I'm like, the advantage that Simmons Plains has got, it's more consolidated because it's a much smaller racetrack. It's less spread out, so it is easier to do, as I said, different activities or food or things like that, because you can put one of them or two of them and you get everyone. Whereas Eastern Creek, the crowd might be just as big, but it's spread out across, 2.5 times the land. So, it might appear less people, or it might appear there's less amenities or things like that, when, the reality is it's just the different nature of the circuits.
Yeah, hard to argue with that. And
well, and my last one as well, sorry, on the rant. So Bathurst, when you think about the amenities and things on offer there, there's the pit lane and there's behind the grandstand.
Yeah.
What else is there?
Yeah. Oh, there's the little clubhouse up the top of the mountain.
Yeah, run by the soccer club.
Yeah. But
so,
that's
doesn't say, that's so few and far between, and no one really, at least I'm aware, has pot shots at that like that. So that's what I was like, just always try and challenge people on it as well. It's like, well, like, is it apples with apples, or like, what do you, what do you want? Yeah.
Well, look at the 12-hour this year. That there was that soccer clubhouse up the top of the mountain. That was it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, I mean, they had a little what was it, like a Heineken bar thing set up there a couple of years ago at the 12
hours. Yeah, it was the Iron Jack bar, but that was shit. Like, so it actually took away spectating things for, you're right, for not much. Like, don't get me wrong, like, if you're like serving pies and chips and anyways, all that kind of stuff, but all that was just like a fenced area, and it's sold Iron Jack, which I assume they're not sponsors this program, but I'm going to throw it out there. $8 for an Iron Jack. No, thank you.
Unless they decide to sponsor us in the future.
Yeah.
$8 for an Iron Jack. Wonderful.
Oh, yeah. Sign us up. But, it's, no, that was billed as something spectacular. And then when you got there, you're like, this is actually taking away a viewing spot for us. So, yeah. And we had plenty of drinks ourselves. So I was kind of like, why are we paying for this?
Yeah. S5000 has been in the news for various reasons lately. They cancelled the final round at Sandown, which I thought was a fair enough excuse, even if the category was getting 18 cars. Like, there was going to be 3 months or something between the second last round at Darwin and the final round at Sandown. So I didn't see a drama with that, but obviously it was given that they've averaged 8 to 10 cars for the normal rounds this year. People just jumped on and said they've called the last round because they're not getting enough cars. There were rumors that the IP was going to everything was going to get sold off to the USA. Now, the S5000 is a SpeedSeries staple. It's been in all the advertisements, but they decide to run the final round of the Australian Drivers' Championship as a support race for the Darwin Supercars event. I didn't think that was a very good look. I understood the reasons they decided not to have the last round at Sandown, but I thought it was just a bad look that you decide to crown your champion as a support race for a completely different program of events, especially given you're fighting with him at the moment.
Well, but I missed that as well. Like, why, even before it was going to be the last round, why was Darwin picked, or why was a V8 support thing picked?
Well, I think that they were always going to. ARG wanted to shuffle a few of their categories onto various supercars support events. That was always the S5000 supported the Sandown Supercars round in 2021, that was always part of the plan. They're always going to have the odd event, and in isolation, a Darwin round is fine. I think supporting them, but given so much promotion has been put into the Speed Series on Stan Sports, and an S5000 car was always front and center, along with TCR and a GT car and a Trans Am and a TCM car. You go and crown the champion on a completely different program, and S5000 now isn't going to be part of a Speed Series event until November at Bathurst.
Yeah, I hear as well. Like I did get the feeling though they were just in a hurry just to wrap it up.
Yeah,
and get it done and focus on the Tasman thing. So I understand that, but yeah, why not then just bring the Sandown round onto Queensland Raceway next week?
Yeah, exactly.
And then finish it on that, because that way, everyone had planned on X amount of rounds and things like that. So and that's what I took out of it too. They were just like, yeah, let's wrap this up, because it's surprising and it's frustrating just to see it at the moment kind of stagnate a little bit. Now they've got the super license points changed. Hopefully next season, or that starts to get some momentum or have some dividends. But yeah, it's really weird. Like, I don't understand. The category's great, the cars look great, the drivers love them, but yeah, everyone seems to be struggling to get people to break into it. So we'll see what happens with the Tasman series. But yeah, the whole thing just seems like, just to fizzle out kind of thing, which I thought it deserved more. Because, looking at the races at Sydney Motorsport Park, as you said, there wasn't high quantity, but the quality of the races were good, and cars banging wheels and doing all that. And yeah, I was gladly have them part of any program that we'd go and see. But so I don't know what the missing link is at the moment for them.
Barry Rogers said recently they were talking about changing sort of who they aim the category at. Maybe that was in the wake of sort of the super license thing, and what Supercars wants. Basically, they want everyone to funnel through Super 2 before they go to Supercars, irrespective of license points by the sounds of it. So
it's ridiculous.
Perhaps they get. I mean, I don't know how you sort of. There was talk maybe making the cars a bit easier to drive.
Yeah, I did see that, but I don't know. It was something with the tires or something as well. Like the Hoosies are so good.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
they last for so long, but it's a bit of a nightmare early on in the weekend. So yeah, you'd hate to see the challenge diminished, because that's what makes them unique.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, how? I mean, I'm not a marketing strategist or anything. How do you? The category appeals to who it appeals to, I would assume. If you're not going to want it to be a feeder to supercars or an alternative for Super 2 drivers or whatever, then what do? You make it a pinnacle in its own right. So then do you give it more, even, I said this on the last podcast about the Speed Series, even if it's at 8 cars, you try and make that your focal point of the weekend. Do you try and bring Formula Ford in as a Speed Series regular, and then you make your own ladder from Formula Ford into S5000?
Yeah, I do two things, right? And you're right. Like it's getting those guys from Formula Ford. Now that Formula Ford's back and well supported by Cams and also by Ford, if I've read that correctly recently. So yeah, you'd almost want to position that as a progression for kids out of Formula Ford. And then equally, you know how they went through the phase where they were spending money on bringing in the World Touring Car drivers, and dropping them in. I would build a partnership with the Road to Indy, like the IndyCar series, and I'd be bringing Hunter McElroy in for a guest drive. I'd be bringing Matt Brabham. do you know what I mean? Like trying to create that link and go, because there's so many of these Australian guys now popping up in, the Road to Indy, but particularly Indy Lights now. I don't know how, but we're seeing more Australian kids pop up in F3 over in that as well. Like, you're not going to get him now, but like, do you know what I mean? Drop Oscar Piastri, last year or the year before into for the odd round, and things like, do you know what I mean? So you kind of go, okay, this is the pathway to there. And as well, as you said, like, people are going to jump out, because if they show talent, I'm sure someone will be lured by a contract to go and drive one of the single mate cars. But But still, like, yeah, I think that would be the one that kind of make this as an open wheel destination, because making them easy to drive and getting older dudes in them, I don't think that's a road to pasture kind of thing for them. I think yeah, it's like a short term thing, and then yeah, get them ready to go and race big, high powered open wheel cars.
I think a tie-up with the Toyota Racing Series as well in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Given the ultimate aim is for the Summer Tasman Series to include New Zealand rounds, people who want to step out of Toyota Racing Series in New Zealand and come over and race S5000.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where the Tasman Series could come in handy. I mean, I think going forward, if they're part of the Speed Series, run them at every Speed Series event.
Yeah,
and crown your champion, the Australian Drivers' Championship, in a Speed Series event. I think the Tasman can be considered a different thing altogether. I mean, have the Tasman Championship Australian rounds be at the Gold Coast supporting the supercars and Adelaide supporting the supercars, and at the Bathurst International with ARG, and then have a couple of New Zealand rounds. And because they're at the end of the year, like we're saying, get Hunter McElroy to come back, get Matt Brabham. Imagine if you could get Linus Lundgaard, the effective Indy Lights champion of this year. Imagine him come out at the end of the year, assuming he'll step up to Indy cars next year. And once again, we're spending other people's money, but for the 5 or 6 Tasman events, get Oscar Piastri, get him to come out for it. Get Jack Doohan, get Callan Williams.
Yeah, Jack Doohan's not a bad one. Yeah.
Yeah, like, especially if you're racing at the Gold Coast and Adelaide and that.
But I think that you want people who are up the pathway. So you actually, people see that this is a progression or a step to, F3, F2, Indy Lights, IndyCar, like that type of thing. And to your point too about, yeah, I agree. I think it's a staple, and that's what makes the ARG Speed Series the unique, but also from my point of view, the strength, that it's like you're going to have a top high quality touring car series. Then you're going to have a high quality open wheel series. Then you're going to have a high quality GT series. Do you know what I mean? Like you just cover like some really strong identities, high quality, and also they're all international categories. Or do you know what I mean? Like to my point about S5000, it's the pathway to international categories. So yeah, that's what I think is cool. But yeah, they almost have a presence at all the rounds. Yeah.
I think short term, the thing is you get a relationship with Formula Ford and with Toyota Racing Series in New Zealand, and offer at least a test to the top drivers in those series. Get them wanting to step up.
Yeah.
You don't have to promise them a drive for the next year, although it'd help. But give them a taste of it, and then they might have backers or something who'll decide, I want to come do this.
Yeah.
The rumors that the category as a whole getting sold, as opposed to just the IP. What did you make of that? I thought on the surface, if the IP was sold to America, I didn't really take that to be a bad thing necessarily, because one assumes S5000 would still continue in Australia. You just someone else that owned the design. The assumption seemed to be that if S5000, if the IP or whatever got sold to an American company, then S5000 in Australia wouldn't exist. But that's not how I took it, the rumours to be, which the rumours ended up being false anyway, at least according to the latest statements from ARG and that. So,
yeah, no, I agree. I think that if there was the IP or another series in the US, I mean, that just strengthens it, because you got, do you know what I mean? More available cars, more interests, like, do you know what I mean? More crossover opportunities. Yeah, I think that's a strength rather than a weakness.
Absolutely no idea how it'd fit into America, but
no, it's like, and that's the same thing. America doesn't need more categories, like we don't need more categories. But it's like, I think that's if someone's knocking on their door and wants to buy some IP rights to replicate it, absolutely, you'd be encouraging them.
Yeah. Touring Car Masters, they had quite a good field of cars at Eastern Creek when we were there at the end of May. One thing I did notice, though, I mean, there were only V8s in the event, although it was a popular winner on the Sunday when Cam Tilley in the Valiant took a beautiful victory, and a bit of a shout out to his sponsor on the rear quarter panel, the Good Fuel Inn at North Ryde, Terry Ryan. What did you think of how TCM's coming along this year?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoyed it. I can't say I followed it as much as the other categories, but no, from what we witnessed on the Sunday viewing out there, it was yeah, no, I enjoyed it. Some, as you're right, like the only V8s in races is not a good thing. Like, do you know what I mean? As we talked about before, the diversity of cars and different types of cars in those series is what makes them unique and a bit special. So yeah, I think having just opening that up or encouraging different cars to come is a positive. But overall, really enjoyed the show that they put on, and John Bower was ringing it, and the controversy with tires or unmarked tires or whatever it was, well, offered a different insight, and watched him come through the field kind of thing. So it was yeah, no, it was enjoyable.
Well, I mean, it wasn't so long ago that, as well as all the V8s in the field, you had the odd Escort, you had the odd Datsun, you had quite a few Porsches. There's been plenty of said, that they're trying to lure the old competitors back as well as new competitors, but for some reason at the moment it just doesn't seem to be happening. Unfortunately, I don't know what they can do.
Yeah, no, I don't know as well, but it's like I feel like every time we go to an event, you'll read something after it, and it's like, oh, someone's unhappy or something's not. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's probably not ideal, but I was like, the show they put on is great. So I was like, almost like just stick to what you do well, guys.
Remember back to last year, the Eastern Creek Run in 2021. That's when there was the big everything came to a head with TCM competitors and ARG management, because, well, at least one competitor thought that they were the fourth rung on the ARG ladder. They didn't feel like they were getting treated with, I guess, with the respect they thought they were entitled to. Well, and I mean, one of the complaints in 2021 was that they were stuck out on the skid pan and not in the garages. Well, when we were there for this year's event, they were on the skid pan again.
Yeah, but I was like going to say too, I don't understand this idea of being stuck out on the skid pan. Like, it's actually it's a nice open area. Like, do you know what I mean? It's actually more viewable for people who come and have a look at your cars than a garage. Like, especially when they're double and sometimes triple stacked in those garages. So I don't understand why the skid pan was ever viewed or is viewed as, you know, being stuck out there, or especially the amount of people that go onto the outside of turn 4 to watch as well. You're right there next to them. So yeah, I don't understand that criticism.
People spend a lot of money on them, and it's a serious class, but for they're historic cars, and I think being in sort of the tents on the skid pan is perfect for them, rather than being in the brick garages down the front, because people love to walk along and just look at the old cars, and
yeah,
you know,
exactly.
that sort of setup's perfect for it.
Yeah, it's easy to move around. It's like, do you know what I mean? You even look at the things that transport them, and yeah, I was gonna say it's pretty. And even I think John Bower even spoke about it too, and he said it's like, yeah, it's kind of like a good atmosphere because everyone's out the front of their cars chatting. You can bump into people. It's yeah. I think it fits the category, but also, you know, if we were running cars and we said you're on the skid pan, I'd be like, great. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I understand why it's seen as a negative.
It's easy to get in and out as well.
Yeah,
you can get out quicker.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that was missing from this year has been Stephen Johnson, because he's got some sponsorship problems with the Falcon. I mean, once again, we said it earlier, it's easy to spend other people's money, but one of the strengths of TCM has always been the drive, like John Bower and other guys, like former touring car stars racing in the series. You think it's imperative. They need to find a way to get Stephen Johnson back, to get Glenn Seaton back into the series.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that kind of, you know, historic nostalgia angle for them, I think, yeah, is an imperative. And remind me, what was it just financial? Was that
just financial? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, there's some great names in it, like obviously Ryan Hansford and George Madeki are running. They've got obviously links to their famous fathers. and you've still got John Bauer, and Stephen Johnson is doing the next round in the Brute 33 replica Mustang.
Yep.
But I mean, that's not the number 17 True Blue Falcon. Glenn Seaton, he hasn't been sighted for a while. I would have thought getting those guys out is part of the appeal of the category.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say, yeah, like it's kind of like, yeah, the old and the new. Like, do you know what I mean? You've got all these history in the cars, but also all this history in the drivers as well. You know, with people who obviously just watched and enjoyed them. So I think it's yeah, I think it's a good mix.
There's a crowd fund at the moment to get Cameron Tilley's Valiant, which was heavily damaged up at the Townsville event a couple of weeks back, to get that repaired. Oh, that's a fan favourite. That ARG needs to ensure that thing's on.
Correct. Yeah, I was gonna say that's in their interest to help out and create a bit of a storyline as well, match dollar for dollar with the spectators and fans. But here's another one too, which I won't speak for the competitor base, but cars like that, why drive them at street circuits? That's how they're going to get bent up and destroyed. And I say the same thing about the GT cars at Surfers Paradise back in the day and things like that. Just pick places where the cars are suited.
I think the thing is, I think that's the events that I think if the TCM competitors had their way, they'd be at all the VO Supercar rounds.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. That's the impression, especially going back to that 2021 letter that got passed around after the Eastern Creek event. It was the driver who penned the letter said it feels like we're the ugly stepsister, important to have around because someone's got to do the heavy lifting, but no one wants her at the ball. In my opinion, not a great way to treat the number one support category and the second most popular series in Australian motorsport behind V8 supercars.
Well, but I don't get that vibe at all. Like, what do they? I don't know what the expectation is. So
I don't know what you do.
Because I was like, it's back to the previous point. He's sticking them in a garage, going to solve all that for them.
No.
Or do they want more TV time? Or I don't get it.
At the end of the day, ARG own them, so you either race with them or you don't.
No, exactly. I think just get out there and do, as you said, get some cars with history, some drivers with history, and get some, support the guys who are keen and want to run, and So the driving standards seem a lot better than obviously you see the highlights reels in the past, people beating up machinery all the time. That does sound a lot. Oh, sorry, from what we witnessed on the Sunday there, a lot better.
Yeah, everyone remembers back to that Winton crash in 2017 as as sort of the definition of everything that wasn't good about TCM.
Yeah, exactly. But obviously some people would point to that and say that's what was good and that's what was entertaining about it. But beg to differ.
Yeah, I left Jim Richards out of that's who they need to get back, because he doesn't seem interested in coming back at all.
No, he seems done. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you need to get Stephen Richards in there then.
Exactly.
From the sounds of the interview Jim Richards gave recently, he's not interested in lending any of his cars, but find something for Stephen Richards.
Yeah.
Geez, even Jason Bright.
Yeah.
He hasn't got a family link to the sort of cars in TCM, but he's still a name, and a name familiar with fans of the last 20 odd years. So, like we said, we're spending other people's money again.
Yeah, but creatively.
Looking forward to this weekend at Queensland Raceway. Sort of TCR and Trans Am are going to be the SpeedSeries regulars at the forefront. I guess the first thing to touch on is Shane Van Gisbergen not racing now in the Trans Am category this weekend. What were your thoughts on all that?
Oh, absolutely appalling. And the fact that they're hiding behind it being a Triple Eight decision as well, just makes me very upset. I was gonna say it's ridiculous, because you've got, obviously there's some internal bickering going on between this ownership group, which is kind of funny after 6 months or so, or a bit longer. But so that's one thing. But as well, you've got these people that say they're here to support Australian motorsport that are actually and actively standing in the way of something. Like, do you know what I mean? The fact that Shane wants to, there's a car there ready for him. He's raced in rally championships, Le Mans 24 hours, drifting, if I'm not too much mistaken, and Toyota, the New Zealand Toyota Open Wheel Series. So it's like all of a sudden now he wants to run a Trans Am, and it's blocked because of political reasons from people who are on one hand trying to say they're supporting Australian motorsport when the reality is so far different. So it's ridiculous. And then on the flip side of that, they're saying, or they're trying to justify it by now they're letting who's that other guy?
Brody Kostecki.
Yeah.
But even that's gone a bit quiet. I don't know if that's been officially confirmed.
I thought I did see something too. He was in like a bit of a launch because they're putting it in that don't say the name. That company's branding on the Trans Am. But but like equally, and that I wondered whether they were doing it as a way to justify it, being like, oh no, actually we are supporting our drivers, they can go and race some other things. But the issue here is there's a lot different for a Shane Van Gisbergen versus a Brody Kostecki. Do you know what I mean? Like the message is totally different. Brody Kostecki can go and drive this and no one will notice, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas having Shane Van Gisbergen drive a Trans Am car is great for the series. It's great for Queensland Raceway, and it's great for like Australian motorsport. Like, and that's the concern there, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, the irony being Tony Quinn is the biggest shareholder of Triple Eight, and it's his track sort of reopening this weekend, and his driver being part of it. I mean, the obvious issue is around the fact that Trans Ams have got Mustangs and Camaros, and supercars haven't raced a Camaro yet, and they're building up the hype for the Camaro coming into the Supercars series next year.
How does it make any difference though? Like,
well, I guess if Van Gisbergen rolls around in a Camaro at the Trans Am race, they obviously have a fear that it'll take some of the sting out of what they've got coming up, which is ridiculous. It's a completely different category. But I mean, the thing is, in isolation, if Triple Eight didn't want Van Gisbergen to do something else, another race, even if it's a local race, in isolation, that's fine. But the thing is, with all the behind the scenes stuff going on, and we saw the story come out this week about how in 2020 at Adelaide, V8 Supercars didn't even want Brett Holdsworth's Trans Am in a photo alongside Lee Holdsworth's supercar.
That exactly, and that is in a nutshell. You've actually got people that have no interest in Australian motorsport, absolutely zero.
Yeah.
And what pains me the most is you've got people in the industry around it who just turn a blind eye to it, or don't call it out, or don't try and hold anyone accountable because they're fearful of their own role within it. So like there's been multiple let's say journalists or publications who've just kind of treaded softly around it, when I was like, the reality of it, this is what's holding Australian motorsport back here, is people trying to benefit themselves and not the sport as a whole.
And I mean, there's a track record of supercars, V8 supercars, Avesco, exerting the odd pressure here and there. Not all the time. Drivers have gone and raced in other categories, but it seems like right back to 1997, there's been varying amounts of pressure in different areas when it comes to drivers in their category wanting to go race something else.
Yeah. And also the thing is, and you only have to go back as far as the 12-hour clash a few years ago.
Yeah.
But as well, so I was like, don't hide behind the Triple Eight thing too. It's like everyone knows it. That the bloke's driven umpteenth number of categories and things like that around. So there's nothing unique about this one other than, as we said, the pressure that's being exerted from the ownership group.
Yeah. But TCR wise, you got a tip for this weekend?
Well, as per our earlier conversation, it's a dangerous thing to make a tip on this as well. But I think, looking at what we saw over the season, but also last one, I think the strength of Josh Buchan, I think he'll be strong. D'Alberto, I want to say D'Alberto in the Honda.
Yep.
So I'll throw it. So I'll put them two out there as well. Obviously, always I'd love to see Moff in the Renault. I'm a big fan of that car, but I just can't see it.
I'm thinking it's a safe bet that Jay Hansen will win a race. I think
Yeah,
he seems to be
race two
knocking off.
maybe. Yeah,
Yeah, or race one.
yeah,
And surely Will Brown's got to get a win. At some point he's got to get one up.
yeah. He's quality and the car's quality. So you're right. They're due. That's.
But well, the way things are going, you have to say D'Alberto will probably come out of it still with the championship lead.
Yeah, and that's why I don't want to jinx him there. But yeah, I wondered if he'll just bag some podiums and top fives and things and extend his championship lead without actually finishing first.
Dylan O'Keefe's been a bit of a sleeper as well. He's the one sitting in second.
Yeah.
So he's
a little quieter cheap. When you think back to the stoush he had at round one at Simon Plains, and then to see him, right up there in the championships, impressive.
Yeah, so be a good weekend's racing either way. So
yeah, no, looking forward to it. And as on the whole, with GTs jumping in as well. So it'll be a great package to watch live on TV, or those lucky enough to be at the circuit.
I will say one last thing on that. This will be round 5. It's been a while since the previous round, and then after this, there's only 2 more rounds for the rest of the year. So it's a long. So pretty much you've got 7 rounds spread out over what ends up being 10 months.
Yeah, because
it's something to look at for next year.
Yeah, I agree. I think which I read an article recently, and I think it was more referencing the GT Championship. They did a survey of the competitors in terms like having a bit more of a consistent calendar rather than some stop-start nature. It was something that the competitor base were keen on, and I imagine that would be similar for the rest of the ARG categories. So hopefully that can be incorporated for next year.
Either that, or maybe going forward, you need to run maybe 10 SpeedSeries events a year, but not have everyone on every event.
Yeah, and just kind of
which I mean, I know that's what the Shannon's Nationals did for a while there, didn't they?
Yes, correct.
But,
yeah, it's kind of like moving.
Yeah, I mean, you'd hope in general that the TCR Championship would, in a few years, gradually work its way up towards maybe 10 rounds a year in time. 7 at the moment's fine. It's just for the fans. It's a long wait in between.
Yeah, but almost then just stagger them consistently. I don't mind waiting, 6 weeks between a race if it's like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you almost set your calendar to it. But yeah, you feel like you have some of them really close together and then nothing. But yeah, so.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's where we'll leave it for this week. We look forward to the racing this weekend, and we'll be back soon for another Motor Racing Passion podcast.